Chen's hands trembled as she wiped down the crystalline communication arrays in the Zephyrian command center. 14 years. 14 years since the dragons vanished, since the sky burned, since everything changed. The aliens barely noticed her anymore, just another broken human, cleaning their sacred technology with reverence they assumed was worship. But it wasn't worship, it was rage, carefully hidden behind downcast eyes and submissive postures. The command center stretched across 3 levels of the orbital station, its walls lined with pulsing bioorganic displays that showed the extent of the Zephyrian empire. Thousands of worlds, billions of enslaved species, all connected by the web of consciousness that their masters called the collective mind. Maya had spent 7 years learning every circuit, every pathway, every weakness in their systems. Not that she could ever use that knowledge. "Filthy creature," hissed Commander Vextol as he passed, his scaled hide shimmering purple in the artificial light. His 6 arms moved in a complex pattern as he interfaced with the neural command nodes, his elongated skull crowned with the ceremonial spines that marked his rank. "Your kind stench pollutes even our air." Maya bowed deeper, letting her long black hair fall across her face. The motion was practiced, perfected through years of survival. "Forgive me, Master. I will work faster." The Zephyrian's laugh was like breaking glass echoing off the crystalline walls. "Faster? You insects couldn't move fast enough to matter. When we conquered your pathetic world, your mighty dragons fled like cowards." His reptilian eyes, each the size of Maya's fist, gleamed with cruel satisfaction. Some protectors they were. Perhaps they finally realized how worthless their human pets truly were. Maya's grip tightened on her cleaning cloth, but she remained silent. Let them believe the dragons abandoned us. Let them think we're broken. The truth was darker. She'd watched the final battle from her grandmother's underground shelter, seen Pyrion's golden flames dim as overwhelming alien forces swarmed the skies. The dragons hadn't fled. They'd fought until the very end, buying time for human evacuations that ultimately failed anyway. As Vextol's footsteps faded down the corridor, Maya returned to the primary communication hub. This was her domain, the one place where her grandmother's old lessons about ancient technology made sense. The Zephyrians thought humans were too primitive to understand their biotech systems, but Grandmother Elena had taught her that all energy followed the same patterns, whether in dragon fire or alien neural networks. The hub itself was a marvel of organic engineering, its core resembling a massive brain suspended in amber fluid. Thousands of fiber-optic nerves connected it to every corner of the empire, carrying messages, orders, and the psychic emanations of the ruling caste. Maya had long ago learned to tune out the alien whispers that leaked from the system, the cold, calculating thoughts that reduced entire species to numbers in their databases. A soft chime echoed through the chamber, different from any she'd heard before. Maya froze, her cloth suspended over a particularly sensitive relay cluster. That frequency, it was wrong somehow, too complex and too elegant for standard Zephyrian protocols. The signal originated from somewhere deep in Zephyrian space, but the encryption pattern made her skin tingle with recognition. Her heart pounding, Maya glanced around the empty room before activating the hidden protocols her grandmother had made her memorize. "For the day when hope returns," Elena had whispered on her deathbed, her weathered hands tracing symbols in the air. "The dragons taught us these frequencies, child. Guard them well. They're older than the stars themselves." Maya's fingers danced across the bio-interface, feeling the alien technology respond to commands it wasn't designed to recognize. The message decrypted slowly, layers of protection falling away like flower petals. What emerged made Maya's blood run cold, coordinates pointing to the void sectors, where captured humans were sent to die in the mining colonies. But beneath the numerical data, written in characters that shouldn't exist on any Zephyrian system, was a single word in the ancient dragon tongue: Solareth. Hope. Maya's legs gave out, sending her crashing to the floor. The cleaning supplies scattered, echoing in the vast chamber. Impossible. The dragons were dead. Everyone knew that. The Zephyrians had made sure of it, broadcasting the destruction across every human settlement, showing twisted metal and charred scales as proof of their absolute victory. But dragon script couldn't be faked. The geometric patterns held power that resonated with something deep in human DNA, a gift from the ancient bond between their species. Only a true dragon could create those symbols, and only someone with the old blood could read them. Her grandmother had possessed that gift, passing it down through generations of women who remembered when humans and dragons shared the same sky. "One of them survived," Maya whispered, her voice breaking in the silence. After all these years, one of them survived. Footsteps echoed in the corridor, the distinctive scrape of Zephyrian claws on metal. Maya quickly erased all traces of the message and resumed her cleaning, but her mind raced with possibilities. The coordinates pointed to Kepler 442b, a dead world in the void sectors, where the Empire dumped its most dangerous prisoners. Why would a dragon be there? And why reach out now after 14 years of silence? She thought of her grandmother's stories, whispered in the darkness of their hiding place. Tales of the great Pyrrhian whose golden flames once lit the skies above New Beijing, of Celeste, whose silver wings carried refugees to safety across the burning cities, of Ember and Vortex, the twin guardians who stood between humanity and the alien fleets until the very end, their combined fire turning enemy battleships into molten rain. 4 dragons, 4 protectors, all presumed dead in the final hour. But if one lived, if one had been fighting all this time in the darkness between stars, Maya closed her eyes and made a decision that would change everything. Tomorrow she would find a way to reach those coordinates. Tomorrow she would discover what message the dragon was truly trying to send. Because sometimes in the depths of despair, hope arrives disguised as impossible things, and sometimes the most unlikely heroes are the ones no one bothers to notice. Maya's quarters in the servant sector were barely large enough for a sleeping mat and a small storage unit. The walls, made of recycled alien metal, bore the scratches and stains of countless human occupants who had lived and died in this cramped space. But tonight, as Maya stared at the ceiling, those walls felt like the bars of a cage she was finally ready to break. The message from Kepler 442b played over and over in her mind. Solareth. Hope. After 14 years of slavery, of watching her people die in the mines and factories, of pretending to be nothing more than a useful animal, finally a sign that the war wasn't over. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Maya's blood froze. No one visited the servant quarters after curfew. Discovery meant interrogation, and interrogation meant death. Maya? The voice was barely a whisper, but she recognized it immediately. Jin Watanabe, a maintenance worker from the engine sector. His father had been a dragon rider in the old wars, one of the few humans who could bond telepathically with the great beasts. Maya crept to the door, pressing her ear against the cold metal. Jin? What are you doing here? I need to talk to you. It's about what you found today. Maya's heart stopped. How could he possibly know? She activated the door's privacy seal, a small mercy the Zephyrians allowed their servants, and let Jin slip inside. He was thin and wiry, his Asian features marked by years of hard labor, but his eyes still held the fierce intelligence that made him dangerous to their captors. How did you... Maya began. The neural networks leak more than the Zephyrians realize, Jin interrupted, his voice urgent. Those of us with the old blood, we can sometimes catch fragments. I felt something change in the communication hub today, something that made my father's ring burn like fire. He pulled a simple band from his finger, dragon silver, forged in the ancient forges before the war. Maya had seen similar rings in her grandmother's collection, each one attuned to a specific dragon's essence. They were supposed to be legend, but Jin's ring was glowing with a faint golden light. That's impossible, Maya breathed. The dragons are dead. Are they? Jin's eyes were intense, desperate. Maya, my father's ring hasn't glowed in 14 years. Not since Pyrrhian fell over New Beijing. But today it came alive again, and there are others. Marcus in the waste processing sector. His mother's amulet started singing. Old Sarah in the nursery. Her grandmother's pendant grew warm for the first time since the invasion. Maya sank onto her sleeping mat, overwhelmed. The message, it was real. One of them survived. More than that, Jin continued, pulling out a small device that looked like alien technology but hummed with familiar patterns. I've been working on this for months. It's a modified transport beacon, disguised as a waste disposal unit. If we can get to the cargo bay, we can hide inside one of the supply ships heading to the void sectors. That's suicide. The void sectors are where they send prisoners to die. Maybe. Or maybe that's where our dragons have been hiding all this time, waiting for the right moment. Jin's hand closed around his father's ring. Maya, I've spent 14 years cleaning alien engines and pretending to be grateful for their scraps. I can't do it anymore. Not when there's a chance, even a small one, that our protectors are still out there. Maya thought of her grandmother's stories, of the bond between dragons and their chosen humans. Eleanor had always insisted that the connection went deeper than telepathy. It was spiritual, woven into the fabric of reality itself. If the rings were responding, if the old artifacts were awakening, "There's something else," she said quietly. The message wasn't random. It came directly to the communication hub, encrypted with protocols my grandmother taught me. Whoever sent it knew I would be there, knew I could decode it. "Then they're waiting for us." Jin's voice carried a conviction that made Maya's decision easier. The next several hours passed in careful preparation. Jin had spent months mapping the security rotations, identifying blind spots in the surveillance systems. Maya used her access to the communication hub to create false maintenance orders that would explain their absence. Together they gathered supplies, food synthesizers, water recyclers, breathing apparatus for the journey through space. The hardest part was leaving without saying goodbye. Maya had friends among the servants, people who had become family during the years of captivity, but involving them meant risking their lives, and she couldn't bear the thought of more human blood on her hands. At 0300 hours, when the station entered its sleep cycle, they made their move. The cargo bay stretched for nearly a kilometer, filled with supply containers bound for dozens of worlds across the Empire. The ships themselves were automated, their biomechanical pilots too simple to question unexpected cargo. Jin's modified beacon guided them to a transport scheduled for the void sectors, a sleek, predatory vessel that resembled a massive ray swimming through the darkness. Its cargo hold was filled with mining equipment and processed nutrients for the prison colonies. "This is it," Jin whispered, as they climbed into a containment unit designed for hazardous materials. The space was cramped but sealed, with enough air recycling to last the 3-day journey. "Once we're inside, there's no going back." Maya looked through the small porthole at the Zephyrian station that had been her prison for 7 years. Somewhere in those corridors, Commander Vextal would discover her absence and realize that his worthless human servant had vanished with classified information. The manhunt would be swift and merciless. But for the first time since the invasion, Maya felt something she'd almost forgotten: purpose. The message had been clear. Someone was waiting for them in the darkness. Someone who remembered what it meant to fight for humanity's freedom. As the transport ship disengaged from the station and began its journey into the void, Maya clutched her grandmother's pendant and whispered a prayer to the dragons she hoped were still alive. "Solareth," she breathed. "Hope endures." In the depths of space, Jin's father's ring pulsed with golden light, as if responding to her words. Whatever waited for them at Kepler 442b, they would face it together. Two broken humans carrying the last embers of a bond that predated the stars themselves. The hunt for the lost dragons had begun. Kepler 442b appeared on the transport's view screen like a wound in space, a barren, rust-colored sphere orbiting a dying red dwarf star. The automated pilot's mechanical voice announced their arrival, with the same indifference it would show for any cargo delivery. Destination reached. Unloading sequence initiated. Maya and Jin huddled in their containment unit as the massive ship shuddered through atmospheric entry. Through the small porthole, Maya watched the desolate landscape rush past. Endless plains of crystallized sand, mountain ranges carved hollow by industrial mining, and the skeletal remains of what had once been forests. This was where the Zephyrian Empire sent its most dangerous prisoners, a world stripped of everything that could sustain life. "How could anything survive here?" Jin whispered, his father's ring now glowing so brightly he had to keep it covered. The transport touched down at Mining Complex 7, a sprawling installation of biomechanical structures that seemed to grow from the planet's scarred surface like metallic tumors. Automated systems began unloading cargo containers, while security drones swept the area with crimson scanning beams. Maya and Jin waited until the ship's departure before carefully opening their hiding place. The air outside tasted of metal and despair. Atmospheric processors hummed in the distance, barely maintaining breathable conditions for the human workers who toiled in the deep mines. In every direction, Maya could see the evidence of Zephyrian efficiency, perfectly organized suffering designed to extract maximum resources from both the planet and its prisoners. "The coordinates," Jin said, consulting the hidden message Maya had decoded. "They point to Sector 12, about 20 kilometers north of here." They moved carefully through the industrial landscape, avoiding the regular patrols of overseer drones. The planet's weak gravity made travel easier, but the constant red twilight created an atmosphere of perpetual dusk that wore at their nerves. Every shadow could hide a Zephyrian guard. Every sound could signal discovery and death. Hours passed before they reached Sector 12, or what remained of it. The mining complex here had been abandoned, its biomechanical structures withered and dark. Crystalline formations jutted from the ground like frozen screams, and the air itself seemed heavier, charged with an energy that made Maya's skin tingle. There, Jin pointed to a massive crater at the sector's heart. Something happened here, something big. As they approached the crater's edge, Maya felt her grandmother's pendant growing warm against her chest. The sensation was familiar, yet strange, like the comfort of a half-remembered lullaby. At the bottom of the crater, partially buried beneath layers of crystallized debris, lay the unmistakable outline of a ship, but not just any ship. This vessel was organic, its curves and surfaces flowing like liquid metal frozen in time, dragon-forged, created by the ancient partnership between human engineering and draconic fire. Maya had seen pictures in her grandmother's books, but never imagined she would witness one with her own eyes. "It's a sanctuary ship," she breathed. The dragons built them during the early days of the war, mobile safe houses for human refugees. They descended into the crater, their boots crunching on the strange crystal formations. As they drew closer to the ship, both of their artifacts began to resonate. Jin's ring pulsing with golden light, Maya's pendant humming with harmonics that seemed to unlock something deep in her memory. The ship's entrance dilated at their approach, recognizing the genetic markers that marked them as descendants of the ancient bond. Inside, bioluminescent panels activated in sequence, revealing corridors that curved and flowed like the inside of a seashell. The technology was impossibly advanced, yet somehow familiar, as if their DNA carried the blueprints for understanding it. "Welcome, children of the bond." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, resonating through the ship's living walls. Maya and Jin froze, their hearts hammering as a figure materialized from the shadows ahead. Tall and elegant, with features that seemed to shift between human and something far more ancient, the being radiated a power that made the air itself sing. "I am Pyrian," the figure said, and Maya's world tilted. "Though I suspect you know me by another form." The humanoid shape began to change, flesh flowing like liquid gold until a magnificent dragon stood before them. Scales the color of molten sun covered a form 30 feet in length, wings folded against a serpentine body that pulsed with inner fire. But it was the eyes that confirmed his identity, ancient, wise, and filled with a sorrow that spoke of countless losses. "You're alive," Maya whispered, tears streaming down her face. "All these years we thought that I had abandoned you." Pyrian's mental voice carried centuries of pain. "Never. I have been here in the deepest part of Zephyrian space, building something they never expected. Hope." Jin fell to his knees, his father's ring blazing like a star. "The others? Celeste? Ember? Vortex? Are they captured but alive?" The Zephyrians discovered they could not simply kill us. Our essence is too deeply woven into the fabric of this reality. Instead, they found worse fates. Celeste is imprisoned in the ice mines of Hoth 7, her silver fire used to power their war machines. The twins, Ember and Vortex, are held in separate dimensions, their bond severed to prevent them from combining their strength. Maya stepped forward, her hand instinctively reaching toward the great dragon's snout. "Then why didn't you try to rescue them? Why hide here for 14 years? Pyrian's golden eyes met hers, and in that gaze she saw the weight of impossible decisions. "Because young Maya Chen, granddaughter of Elena the Wise, I was waiting for someone who could do what I cannot." "What do you mean?" "The Zephyrians are not merely conquerors. They are parasites, feeding on the psychic energy of enslaved species. But they made one critical error when they captured the dragons. They assumed our bond with humanity was simple telepathy. They do not understand that some humans carry within them the potential to become something far greater." Maya felt the pendant burning against her chest as Pyrian continued. "You are a bondkeeper, Maya. One of the last. Your grandmother was one, though she never had the chance to fully awaken her power. You have the ability not just to communicate with dragons, but to share our essence, to become the bridge between our species that the prophecies foretold." The dragon's head lowered, until Maya could see her reflection in his golden scales. "But the awakening requires a choice, and it cannot be undone. You would gain the power to free your people and reunite the dragons, but you would no longer be fully human." In the silence that followed, Maya heard the whispered voices of all the humans who had died in the mines, all the children who would never see their parents again, all the dreams that had been crushed under Zephyrian tyranny. "What do I need to do?" she asked. Pyrian smiled, and for the first time in 14 years, true hope blazed like dragonfire in the darkness between the stars. The sanctuary ship's inner chamber was a marvel that defied comprehension, a crystalline dome filled with floating pools of liquid light, each one pulsing with memories from the bond between dragons and humans. Maya stood at the center, surrounded by holographic images of the past, dragon riders soaring through Earth's skies, children playing in the shadow of great wings, humans and dragons working together to build cities that touched the stars. "This is the Chamber of Echoes," Pyrian explained, his massive form coiled around the room's perimeter. "Every bond ever forged between our species is recorded here, every shared moment of triumph and sorrow. To become a bondkeeper, you must experience them all." Maya's hands trembled as she reached toward the nearest pool of light. "Will it hurt?" "Pain is inevitable when one grows beyond their original form," the dragon replied gently. "But you will not be alone. Jin will serve as your anchor to humanity while the transformation occurs." Jin stepped forward, his father's ring now blazing so brightly it cast golden shadows on the crystalline walls. "I don't understand. What exactly is a bondkeeper?" Pyrian's ancient eyes fixed on the young man. "Long ago, when the first humans discovered dragons sleeping beneath the mountains, there were those among your kind who could do more than simply communicate with us. They could share our essence, becoming living bridges between species. The bondkeepers could channel draconic power through human creativity, could feel what we felt, could even take our forms when the need was great." Maya felt the pendant at her throat growing hotter, responding to some deep resonance in the chamber. "My grandmother never mentioned any of this. Elena knew, but she also knew the price." Pyrian's mental voice carried profound sadness. "The last bondkeeper before you was my partner during the final battle over New Beijing, Sarah Kim, a pilot whose courage burned brighter than any star. When the Zephyrian fleet overwhelmed our defenses, she made the ultimate sacrifice, merging her essence completely with mine to create a weapon that could destroy their flagship." The dragon's golden scales dimmed with memory. She saved millions of lives that day, but the effort killed her human form. Her consciousness lives on within me, but she can never again walk among her own people. This is why I hesitate to ask this of you, Maya. The power of a bondkeeper comes at the cost of everything you are. Maya walked to the chamber's central pool, where images of her grandmother flickered in the liquid light. Elena, as a young woman, standing beside a silver dragon that could only be Celeste. Elena learning the old songs, the frequency patterns that could heal both human hearts and draconic souls. Elena weeping as she watched the dragons fall, knowing her generation had failed to protect the ancient alliance. "Show me," Maya said quietly. "Show me what I need to do to free them." Pyrian's form shimmered, and suddenly the chamber filled with tactical holographs showing star systems across the galaxy. The Zephyrians hold Celeste in the ice mines of Hoth 7, using her silver fire to power their deep space weapons. Ember is trapped in a pocket dimension within the Nexus station, forced to fuel their interdimensional research. Vortex is held in the mirror realm, his chaos energy harvested to power their reality-bending experiments. Each location pulsed with crimson warning signals, fortified beyond measure, guarded by fleets that could annihilate entire solar systems. "To reach them, we need more than stealth or military force," Pyrian continued. "We need someone who can walk between worlds, who can exist simultaneously as human and dragon, who can use the Zephyrians' own dimensional technology against them." Maya studied the holographs, her mind racing through possibilities. The dimensional barriers, they're designed to keep dragons out, not humans, but a bondkeeper could slip through as human and emerge as dragon on the other side. Exactly. But Maya, once the transformation begins, there is no returning to your old life. You will become something new, something that has never existed before, the first of a new kind of being, carrying the hopes of both our species. Jin moved closer, his expression torn between fear and determination. "What about the resistance? There are others like us scattered across the galaxy, humans with the old bloodlines. If Maya becomes a bondkeeper, can she awaken them too?" Pyrian's eyes brightened with something approaching hope. "That is the true power of the bond. A fully awakened bondkeeper can activate dormant genetic memories in others, can teach them to hear the dragon songs that have been silent for so long. She could rebuild the alliance from within the Zephyrian Empire itself." The chamber fell silent as Maya contemplated the magnitude of what was being asked. To save her people, she would have to stop being one of them. To preserve humanity's future, She would have to transcend her own humanity. But as she looked at the images of suffering in the holographs, human children working themselves to death in alien mines, families torn apart and scattered across the galaxy, her choice became clear. "I accept," she said, stepping into the central pool of liquid light. The transformation began immediately. Energy coursed through Maya's body as genetic sequences that had lain dormant for generations suddenly activated. Her consciousness expanded, touching minds across the galaxy. Every human with dragon blood, every descendant of the ancient riders, every person who had ever dreamed of soaring through the stars. She felt Celeste's anguish in the ice mines, the silver dragon's fire slowly being consumed by Zephyrian machines. She sensed Ember's rage as his flame was twisted into weapons of destruction, and Vortex's sorrow as his chaos magic was perverted into instruments of oppression. But she also felt something else. Thousands of human minds suddenly awakening to their heritage, artifact rings and pendants blazing to life across the galaxy as the bond reasserted itself. In hidden corners of the Empire, servants and slaves looked up with newfound purpose, their eyes reflecting the inner fire that had always been their birthright. Maya's body began to change, scales of deep blue spreading across her skin as wings unfurled from her shoulders. But unlike a true dragon, she retained her human consciousness, her mortal perspective that allowed her to see solutions that even ancient wisdom might miss. "It is done," Pyrian said, his voice filled with wonder. "The first bondkeeper in over 1,000 years has awakened. Now, Maya Cheneverth, are you ready to begin the true war? The war to reclaim both our species' freedom?" Maya opened eyes that now glowed with inner dragon fire and spoke with a voice that harmonized human determination with draconic power. "Let's bring our family home." The hunt for the lost dragons had become something far greater, the rebirth of the bond that would reshape the galaxy itself. The journey to Hoth 7 took 3 days aboard Pyrian's sanctuary ship, which moved through space like a living comet, its bioluminescent hull disguised as stellar debris. Maya spent the time learning to control her new form, practicing the shift between human and draconic states, mastering the ability to exist in both simultaneously. The power was intoxicating, but also terrifying. She could feel the consciousness of every awakened human across the galaxy, their minds touching hers like distant stars. "The ice mines of Hoth 7 are the Empire's most secure facility," Pyrian explained as they approached the frozen world. "Celeste has been held there for 12 years, her silver fire harvested to power the Zephyrian's deep space communication arrays. Without her flames, their far-flung empire would collapse into chaos." Through the ship's organic viewports, Maya watched the planet grow larger, a sphere of crystalline white and blue, beautiful and deadly. Massive orbital platforms surrounded it like metallic rings, their weapons arrays capable of vaporizing anything that approached without authorization. "How do we get past those defenses?" Jin asked. His role had evolved during the journey. No longer just Maya's companion, he had become the voice of humanity in their small alliance, ensuring that their dragon perspective didn't lose touch with mortal concerns. Maya smiled, feeling the dual nature of her consciousness working in harmony. "We don't go around them, we go through them." She began the transformation, her human form dissolving into energy that reconstituted itself as pure light. This was the Bondkeeper's greatest gift, the ability to exist as both matter and energy, to phase through barriers that would stop even the most powerful dragon. Pyrian had been amazed when she first discovered this ability. It was something entirely new, a fusion of human adaptability and draconic essence. The orbital defenses detected nothing as Maya passed through them like a ghost, materializing aboard the largest platform. The Zephyrian guards never saw her coming. Moving within human speed, she disabled the security systems and opened a breach just large enough for Pyrian's ship to slip through. Hoth 7's surface was a nightmare of industrial exploitation. Strip mines carved geometric patterns into the polar ice, while massive harvesting platforms extracted precious minerals from the planet's core. At the center of it all stood the Convergence Facility, a crystalline tower that pierced the clouds, its peak lost in the perpetual storms that raged in the upper atmosphere. "Celeste is at the top," Maya said, her enhanced senses tracking the familiar signature of draconic essence. "But she's diminished. They've been draining her for so long that she's barely conscious." They landed the ship in an abandoned mining complex, its automated systems long since depleted. The temperature outside was 40 degrees below freezing, but Maya's transformed physiology barely noticed the cold. Jin, wrapped in thermal gear scavenged from the ship, followed as they made their way toward the convergence facility. The approach was surprisingly easy, too easy. Maya's enhanced awareness detected the trap before they walked into it, but by then it was too late to avoid. Energy barriers erupted around them as a figure stepped from the shadows of the facility's entrance. Well, the legendary bondkeeper finally reveals herself. Maya's blood froze as she recognized the voice. Commander Vextal, the Zephyrian officer who had tormented her for 7 years, stood before them wearing an expression of triumphant malice. His purple scales gleamed with biomechanical enhancements, and his 6 arms now ended in weapon systems that hummed with deadly energy. "Did you think we were unaware of your little transformation?" Vextal continued, his reptilian features twisted in a cruel smile. "We've been monitoring the awakening of your kind for months. Every activation of those pathetic artifacts, every human who looked up with hope, all of it reported to us." Jin stepped protectively in front of Maya, but she gently moved him aside. The fear she had felt as a servant was gone, replaced by something far more dangerous, the righteous anger of a protector whose family had been hurt. "You made one mistake, Vextal," Maya said, her voice carrying harmonics that made the air itself vibrate. "You assumed we were still the broken creatures you enslaved, but we were never broken. We were waiting." The transformation came like lightning. Maya's human form, exploding outward into a dragon of midnight blue scales, shot through with veins of silver fire. But unlike Pyrion's ancient majesty, Maya's draconic form carried something uniquely human, the ability to improvise, to find unexpected solutions to impossible problems. Vextal's weapons fired, beams of concentrated energy that could have cut through starship hull. Maya didn't dodge. Instead, she absorbed the energy, her bondkeeper physiology converting it into raw power that flowed through her scales like liquid starlight. "Impossible," Vextal hissed, backing toward the facility entrance. "Dragons cannot channel our technology." "I'm not just a dragon," Maya replied, her mental voice echoing with both human determination and draconic fury. "I'm something new." The battle was swift but devastating. Vextal's enhancements meant nothing against a being who could exist as both energy and matter, who could phase through his defenses and strike from impossible angles. When it was over, the Zephyrian commander lay broken among the ice crystals, his arrogance finally silenced. But the real challenge waited inside the convergence facility. Maya and Jin ascended through levels of biomechanical horror, laboratories where dragon essence was refined into psychic weapons, chambers where human prisoners were subjected to experiments designed to break their will, holding cells filled with the broken remnants of other species' champions. At the top of the tower they found Celeste. The silver dragon was barely recognizable, her once magnificent form reduced to a skeletal framework, suspended in crystalline restraints. Cables snaked from her body to massive machines that pulsed with stolen fire, while Zephyrian technicians monitored the slow consumption of her life force. "Celeste," Maya whispered, resuming human form as she approached the dying dragon. Ancient silver eyes opened, focusing with difficulty on Maya's face. "Child? But you carry the bond within you. How is this possible?" "I am Maya Chen, granddaughter of Elena the Wise. I've come to take you home." Maya placed her hands on the restraints, feeling the bondkeeper power flow through her into the crystalline bonds. One by one, they shattered, freeing Celeste from 12 years of torment. But the silver dragon was too weak to fly, too diminished to transform. "I cannot. The machines have taken too much. I am dying, young bondkeeper." "No." Maya's voice carried absolute conviction. "I won't let that happen. Jin, help me lift her." Together, they carried Celeste to the facility's peak, where Pyrion waited with the sanctuary ship. As they placed the silver dragon in the ship's healing chamber, Maya made a decision that would have horrified her grandmother. "I'm going to share my essence with her," she announced. "Give her some of my life force to stabilize her condition." "Maya, that's incredibly dangerous," Pyrion warned. "A bondkeeper's essence is finite. Give too much away and you could lose your humanity permanently." Maya looked at Celeste's failing form, then at Jin's worried expression, then at the star-filled darkness beyond the ship's hull where millions of humans waited for salvation. "Some risks are worth taking," she said, placing her hands on Celeste's silver scales. The transfer began, blue fire flowing from Maya into Celeste, carrying with it not just power but memories of Earth's green skies, of children's laughter, of hope that refused to die, even in the darkest times. Celeste's eyes blazed to life as Maya's essence restored her failing strength. "Thank you, child, I am whole again." As Hoth 7 fell behind them, Maya smiled despite her exhaustion. One dragon saved, 2 to go. But now they faced an even greater challenge, rescuing Ember and Vortex from dimensions where the very laws of reality worked against them. The Bondkeeper's path had never been easy, but with each step, the galaxy grew a little brighter. The Nexus Station existed at the intersection of 7 dimensions, a massive structure that defied conventional physics. Maya watched it through the sanctuary ship's viewports as they approached, a writhing mass of crystalline spires and biomechanical tunnels that seemed to fold in on itself, existing in multiple realities simultaneously. This was where the Zephyrian Empire conducted its most dangerous experiments, bending the laws of space and time to forge weapons that could reshape reality itself. "Ember has been trapped there for 11 years, Celeste explained, her silver scales still dim but growing brighter with each passing hour as Maya's essence helped heal her wounds. They've imprisoned him in a pocket dimension, using his chaos fire to power their interdimensional research. Every day, they force him to burn hotter, creating tiers in reality that their scientists study and exploit." Maya felt her Bondkeeper consciousness reaching out, trying to sense Ember's presence through the dimensional barriers. What she found made her recoil in horror, a mind fractured by years of torture, a proud dragon reduced to a living weapon whose only purpose was to fuel his captor's ambitions. "The pocket dimensions are sealed with psychic locks," Pyrian said, his ancient voice heavy with concern. "To enter one, you must first convince the dimension itself that you belong there. For a human, it would be impossible. For a dragon, it would be fatal. Our essence is too large, too chaotic for such confined spaces. But for a Bondkeeper," Maya asked, though she already knew the answer. "For a Bondkeeper, it might be possible. Your dual nature allows you to compress your consciousness while maintaining your power. But Maya, these aren't ordinary prisons. The Zephyrians have weaponized the pocket dimensions, turning them into mazes of psychological torture. You could become lost forever, trapped between realities with no way home." Jin, who had been studying the station's schematics on the ship's bio-displays, looked up with a troubled expression. "There's something else. The energy readings from the station are off the charts. They're not just using Ember's fire for research anymore. They're building something big." Celeste's silver eyes narrowed as she accessed her connection to the ancient dragon network, reaching out with senses that predated the formation of galaxies. "A reality weapon," she breathed. "They're creating a device that can rewrite the fundamental laws of physics in entire star systems. With it, they could make their empire eternal, unchangeable, absolute." Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. "How close are they to completion?" "Days, perhaps hours," Celeste replied. "The dimensional resonance patterns are stabilizing. Once they achieve perfect harmony, the weapon will be ready to deploy." The sanctuary ship shuddered as they passed through the station's outer detection grid. Unlike Hoth 7, the Nexus Station was expecting them. Automated defenses powered by stolen dragonfire opened up with weapons that fired bullets made of crystallized time, missiles that exploded in past and future simultaneously, energy beams that aged their targets to dust in microseconds. Pyrian's ship danced between the attacks, its living hull adapting to each new threat. But Maya could feel the strain on the ancient dragon. He was fighting battles across multiple timelines at once, using his vast experience to outmaneuver weapons that existed in several dimensions simultaneously. "I need to get inside," Maya said, beginning her transformation. "Find a way to reach the pocket dimension where Ember is held." "Not alone," Jin said firmly. "These dimensional mazes, they attack the mind as much as the body. You'll need an anchor, someone to keep you connected to baseline reality." Maya wanted to argue, but the logic was undeniable. The pocket dimensions were designed to isolate and disorient their prisoners, to make them forget who they were and why they fought. With Jin's consciousness linked to hers, she would have a lifeline back to her human identity. The boarding process was unlike anything Maya had experienced. Instead of phasing through solid barriers, she had to navigate between layers of reality itself. The station existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously, and each level of existence presented different challenges. In the 3rd dimension, Zephyrian guards fired weapons that could kill the body. In the 4th, psychic entities attacked the mind. In the seventh, abstract concepts like hope and despair took physical form and waged war in the corridors. Maya moved through them all, her bondkeeper nature allowing her to adapt to each dimensional framework. Jin's presence in her mind provided stability, his purely human perspective serving as a compass that pointed towards sanity when reality became too fluid to navigate. They found the pocket dimension housing at the station's heart, a sphere of crystallized space-time that pulsed with internal fire. The entrance was guarded by creatures that existed only partially in their dimension, beings that the Zephyrians had created by forcing different realities to intersect and merge. "Halt!" one of the Guardians commanded, its voice echoing from multiple timelines at once. "This space is forbidden to all unauthorized entities." Maya stepped forward, her form shifting to match the dimensional frequency of the Guardian. "I am Maya Chen, bond-keeper of the Ancient Alliance. I claim the right of draconic law to face my bonded brother." The Guardian's fractured existence flickered with confusion. The concept of draconic law was older than the Zephyrian Empire, encoded into the fundamental structure of reality itself. Even in this weaponized dimension, certain truths remained absolute. You carry the bond within you. This is unprecedented." The Guardian stepped aside, its form dissolving into probability waves. "Enter, but know that this dimension was designed to break even the strongest minds. Your dragon will not remember you. He may not even remember himself." Maya and Jin stepped through the sphere's surface, and reality twisted around them like a kaleidoscope. The pocket dimension was a maze of crystalline corridors that changed configuration with each step, illuminated by flames that burned in colors that had no names. At the center, suspended in a cage made of solidified time, was Ember. The dragon was magnificent even in captivity. Scales of deep crimson shot through with veins of molten gold, wings that spanned the width of the dimension, eyes that burned with inner fire. But those eyes held no recognition, no memory of the bond that had once connected him to humanity. "Who dares disturb my prison?" Ember's voice was raw, broken by years of forced servitude. "Have the Grey Masters come with new torments, new experiments to fuel with my flame?" Maya approached the cage slowly, her heart breaking at the sight of the proud dragon reduced to this hollow shell. "Ember, I am Maya Chen. I've come to take you home." "Home?" The dragon's laugh was bitter, echoing off the crystalline walls. "There is no home. There is only the burning, the endless burning that feeds their machines. I am Ember the consumed, Ember the broken. I have no memory of anything else." Maya placed her hands on the time-forged bars of his cage, feeling the dimensional locks that held him prisoner. These weren't simple restraints. They were woven into the fabric of reality itself, designed to make escape not just impossible, but literally inconceivable. "Then let me show you what you've forgotten," Maya said, beginning to channel her bond-keeper essence. The process was more dangerous than anything she'd attempted before. She opened her mind completely, sharing not just power but memories, images of Earth before the invasion, of dragons and humans working together, of the joy that came from protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Ember's eyes widened as the memories flowed into him, awakening neural pathways that the Zephyrians had thought permanently severed. I remember Sarah's laughter when I taught her to fly, children playing in my shadow, the taste of freedom on the wind. The dimensional cage began to fracture, as Ember's true nature reasserted itself, but the pocket dimension fought back, reality itself turning hostile as the Zephyrian programming tried to maintain control. "Maya," Jin's voice was urgent in her mind, "something's wrong, the dimension is collapsing. If we don't get out now, we'll be trapped here forever." Maya looked at Ember, then at the cracking walls of their prison. The dragon was free, but still weak from years of captivity. Getting all three of them out of a collapsing pocket dimension would require more power than she had left. "Unless, Ember," she said, "I need you to trust me. We're going to burn our way out of here, but it's going to take everything we have." The dragon's eyes blazed with renewed purpose. "Then let us burn together, Bondkeeper. Let us show these parasites what happens when they cage the fire itself." Maya and Ember joined their essences, human determination merging with draconic fury. The resulting conflagration didn't just destroy the pocket dimension, it consumed it, transforming the crystallized space-time back into raw possibility. They emerged into the station's central chamber as reality explosions rocked the entire structure. Alarms screamed in frequencies that existed across multiple dimensions, as the Zephyrians realized their carefully controlled experiments were spiraling into chaos. The reality weapon, Celeste's voice reached them through their bond. It's destabilizing. The entire station is going to collapse into a dimensional singularity. Maya smiled grimly as she helped support Ember's weakened form. 2 dragons saved, 1 to go. But first, they had to escape before the Nexus station tore itself apart and took them with it. The Bondkeeper's journey was far from over, but with each step, the impossible began to seem merely improbable. The Nexus station tore itself apart around them, as Maya, Jin, and Ember fought their way through corridors that shifted between dimensions with each passing second. Reality weapon components exploded in showers of crystallized time, while Zephyrian scientists fled screaming as their carefully ordered experiments dissolved into chaos. The station's biomechanical systems, designed to regulate interdimensional energy, couldn't handle the feedback from Ember's liberation. Whole sections of the structure were aging centuries in moments, while others reverted to primordial states. "The docking bay is collapsing into the 5th dimension," Ember gasped, his weakened form struggling to maintain coherence as Maya supported him. "We'll need another way out." Through their bond, Maya felt Pirion and Celeste fighting desperately to bring the sanctuary ship closer, but the dimensional instabilities made it impossible to establish a stable connection. Energy storms raged through space around the station, turning the very fabric of reality into a weapon that attacked anything within a light-year radius. "There!" Jin pointed to a maintenance shaft that seemed to exist in only 3 dimensions, a relic from the station's original construction before the Zephyrians had begun their reality-warping experiments. "If we can reach the outer hull, maybe Pirion can extract us." They crawled through ventilation systems that groaned with the strain of existing in multiple realities simultaneously. Behind them, Maya could hear the roar of dimensional cascades as the station's core began to collapse into a singularity that would consume everything within a solar system's radius. They burst through an emergency airlock just as Pirion's ship materialized beside them, its biomechanical hull opening like a flower to receive them. Maya barely had strength left to maintain her human form as they tumbled into the ship's healing chambers, Ember's massive draconic bulk filling most of the available space. "The station?" Maya gasped as Celeste tended to Ember's dimensional burns. "Gone," Pirion replied, his ancient voice heavy with mixed triumph and sorrow. "The entire structure collapsed into a black hole that exists in 7 dimensions simultaneously. It will take the Zephyrians decades to rebuild their interdimensional research capabilities." Maya should have felt victorious, but the weight of what still lay ahead pressed down on her like a mountain. "Vortex. We still need to reach Vortex. The mirror realm is unlike anything we've faced before," Celeste explained, as her silver flames helped stabilize Ember's fractured essence. "It's not a prison in the conventional sense. It's a reflection of reality, where everything exists in reverse. Light becomes darkness, strength becomes weakness, hope becomes despair. Vortex has been trapped there for 9 years, his chaos magic turned inside out to power their reality manipulation experiments." Ember lifted his great head, golden eyes still clouded with pain but burning with renewed purpose. "I can feel him, even from here." His anguish echoes through the dimensional barriers. "They've been using his reversed chaos energy to stabilize their empire, to make their conquest seem inevitable and eternal." Maya closed her eyes and extended her bondkeeper senses, searching for the familiar signature of the 4th dragon. What she found made her shudder. A consciousness trapped in a realm where every positive emotion became its opposite, where memories of joy transformed into instruments of torture. "How do we reach him?" she asked. "The mirror realm can only be accessed through perfect reflection," Pirion explained. "But it's not a matter of simply looking in a mirror. You must become a reflection of yourself, must exist as both the original and the inverse simultaneously. For most beings, this is impossible. The mind cannot comprehend being both itself and its opposite. But a bondkeeper already exists as multiple states of being," Maya realized. "Human and dragon, matter and energy, individual and collective consciousness. Yes, but the mirror realm will test every aspect of your identity. You will face versions of yourself that represent every choice you didn't make, every path you didn't take. The realm feeds on doubt and regret, turning your own thoughts against you." Jin stepped forward, his expression determined despite the exhaustion that lined his face. "I'm going with her." "Jin, no," Maya protested. "The mirror realm is designed to drive people insane. A purely human consciousness couldn't survive the psychological assault. Maybe not, Jin replied, his father's dragon ring pulsing with steady light. But you'll need an anchor more than ever. Someone to remind you which reflection is real, which version of yourself is worth fighting for. Before Maya could argue further, alarms began shrieking throughout the ship. Through the viewports, they could see Zephyrian pursuit fleets emerging from hyperspace, massive vessels that moved with the cold precision of their creators. "They've found us," Pyrian said, his form beginning to shift toward full dragon configuration. "The destruction of the Nexus station has brought every available ship in this sector." "How long until we reach the Mirror Realm?" Maya asked. 18 hours at best, but these ships will overtake us long before then." Maya looked at her companions, Ember still weak from his ordeal, Celeste recovering from decades of captivity, Jin exhausted from their dimensional adventures, and Pyrian facing impossible odds against an entire fleet. The weight of leadership, of being the only one who could complete their mission, settled on her shoulders like a cloak of stars. "Then we don't run," she said quietly. "We finish this now." "Maya, there are over 50 ships in that fleet," Celeste warned. "Even with all 4 dragons united, we couldn't face those odds." "We're not going to fight them," Maya replied, her mind working through possibilities that only a bondkeeper could conceive. "We're going to turn their own power against them. Jin, I need you to help me access the ship's communication array. If I can reach the awakened humans throughout the galaxy." Understanding dawned in Jin's eyes. "You want to coordinate a simultaneous uprising? Every human with dragon blood, every descendant of the ancient riders, all acting at once." "Exactly. The Zephyrians have spent decades believing we're broken, that we've accepted our fate as slaves. They've never considered what would happen if we all remembered our heritage at the same moment." Maya moved to the ship's central chamber, where the bioorganic communication systems pulsed with living light. Placing her hands on the neural interfaces, she opened her consciousness to its fullest extent, reaching out across the galaxy to touch every awakened mind that carried the dragon bond. She felt them, millions of humans on thousands of worlds, all connected by the ancient alliance that had never truly died. Servants in Zephyrian palaces who had spent years memorizing their masters' routines. Workers in strategic facilities who knew every weakness in the Empire's infrastructure. Children who had grown up dreaming of dragons, despite being told such dreams were forbidden. "My brothers and sisters," Maya's mental voice carried across the galaxy, touching minds that had been waiting their entire lives to hear those words. "The time of hiding is over. The dragons have returned and the bond calls you to action. Rise up. Remember who you are. Remember who we used to be." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across the galaxy, Zephyrian facilities began experiencing accidents, power systems mysteriously failing, communication networks suffering simultaneous breakdowns, security protocols somehow glitching at precisely the wrong moments. The Empire's slaves had become its greatest vulnerability, and they were finally ready to exploit it. The pursuing fleet suddenly found itself receiving urgent recall orders from a dozen different sectors as rebellions erupted throughout Zephyrian space. One by one, the massive warships peeled away from their pursuit, racing to contain uprisings that threatened to tear their empire apart. "Impossible!" Maya heard Commander Vextal's voice crackling over the communications array. He had survived their encounter on Hoth 7, though his ship bore the scars of hasty repairs. "How can broken slaves coordinate such precise attacks?" Maya smiled and opened a direct channel to his ship. "We were never broken, Vextal. We were just waiting for the right moment to remind you who you're dealing with." The sanctuary ship slipped away in the chaos, carrying its precious cargo toward the Mirror Realm and the final confrontation that would determine the fate of both species. Behind them, the Zephyrian Empire began to crumble as its foundation, the absolute control of enslaved populations, revealed itself to be built on shifting sand. But the hardest battle still lay ahead. In the Mirror Realm, Maya would face not just Vortex's captors, but the darkest aspects of her own soul reflected back at her with perfect, terrifying clarity. The Bondkeeper's greatest test was about to begin. The Mirror Realm existed at the intersection of possibility and nightmare, a dimension where reality bent back on itself like light caught in an infinite loop of mirrors. As Maya and Jin approached the shimmering barrier that separated their universe from its inverted twin, Maya felt her Bondkeeper consciousness fragmenting, each aspect of her dual nature, creating multiple reflections that seemed to mock her with their familiarity. "Remember," Pyrion's voice echoed in her mind as the sanctuary ship maintained position just outside the dimensional boundary. "In the mirror realm, everything is reversed. Your strengths become weaknesses. Your hopes become fears. The version of you that exists there will be everything you chose not to become." Maya nodded, steeling herself as she began the complex transformation required to exist in the inverted dimension. Unlike her previous shifts between human and dragon forms, this required her to become both herself and her opposite simultaneously, a paradox that would have destroyed any mind less flexible than a bond-keeper's. The transition was agony. Maya felt her consciousness split along lines of possibility, creating mirror versions of every choice she had ever made. The Maya who had chosen to remain a servant forever. The Maya who had turned away from the dragon's message. The Maya who had let fear consume her compassion until nothing remained but bitter survival. "Stay with me," Jin whispered, his hand gripping hers as they passed through the barrier. His presence was an anchor in the storm of fractured identity, reminding her which reflection was real. The mirror realm was beautiful in its horror, a perfect inversion of their ship's interior, where the bioluminescent walls pulsed with dark light and the healing chambers had become instruments of exquisite torture. Everything was familiar yet wrong, like a childhood memory corrupted by decades of nightmares. "Welcome, sister." Maya spun to face the voice, her heart stopping as she saw herself standing in the corridor ahead. But this version of Maya wore the purple scales of a Zephyrian noble, her eyes glowing with the cold satisfaction of absolute power. This was Maya the Conqueror, the reflection who had chosen to join her oppressors rather than fight them. "I wondered when you would finally arrive," Mirror Maya continued, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had never known doubt. "Did you really think you could hide from me forever? I'm everything you could have been if you had simply chosen strength over sentiment." Behind the mirror version, Jin saw his own reflection, a broken man whose father's sacrifice had driven him to madness, whose hatred had consumed everything good in his soul until only vengeance remained. Mirror Jin's eyes burned with the desire to watch the galaxy burn, to make every living being pay for his family's suffering. "Ignore them," Maya said, though her voice trembled with uncertainty. "They're not real, they're just reflections, twisted mirrors of our worst impulses." "Aren't we?" Mirror Maya laughed, the sound like breaking crystal. "Look around you, little bondkeeper. This realm doesn't create lies, it reveals truths you're too weak to face. I'm the you that would have prevented all this suffering. The you that would have negotiated with the Zephyrians instead of watching billions die in futile resistance." The corridor ahead split into multiple paths, each one leading deeper into the maze of reflections that comprised the mirror realm. Maya could sense Vortex somewhere in the distance, his chaos magic twisted into patterns of perfect order that served his captor's needs. But reaching him would mean navigating through layers of psychological torture designed to break even the strongest minds. "Which path?" Jin asked, though his voice was strained with the effort of resisting his mirror self's whispered temptations of revenge. Maya closed her eyes and extended her bond-keeper senses, feeling for the familiar signature of dragon essence. What she found made her gasp. Vortex wasn't just imprisoned in the mirror realm, he had become part of it. His chaos magic had been so thoroughly inverted that he now served as the dimensional anchor that kept the entire realm stable. "The center," she said. "We need to reach the heart of the reflection matrix." "But Maya," she paused, looking at her companion with eyes that reflected the weight of impossible choices. "The closer we get to Vortex, the stronger our mirror selves will become. Eventually, we might not be able to tell which version is real." They chose the left path, walking through corridors lined with mirrors that showed not their current selves, but every version they might have been. Maya saw herself as a Zephyrian experiment, her bond-keeper abilities used to perfect their enslavement techniques. She saw herself as a broken servant who had watched her grandmother die without lifting a finger to help. She saw herself as a tyrant who used dragon power to rule over the very humans she claimed to protect. Each reflection whispered, pleading and threatening in equal measure. "You know we're real," they said. "We're the choices you made in your heart, even if you were too cowardly to act on them. Join with us. Accept what you truly are." Jin struggled beside her, his mirror selves showing him futures where he had betrayed Maya to save his own life, where he had used his father's heritage to claim power over other humans, where his pain had transformed him into the very monster he fought against. "They're getting stronger," he gasped, his grip on reality weakening as the reflections began to seem more solid than the corridor around them. Maya felt it too, the growing weight of alternatives, the seductive pull of paths not taken. In the mirror realm, regret had physical form, and every doubt became a chain that bound the soul to its own limitations. But then she remembered Ember's fractured consciousness, being restored by shared memories, Celeste's silver fire rekindled by hope she had thought lost forever. The Bondkeeper's greatest power wasn't in choosing between alternatives, it was in embracing them all while remaining true to the core of identity that made choice possible. "You're right," Maya said to her mirror self, who had been following them through the corridors with predatory patience. "You are real. You're all real. Every choice I didn't make, every path I didn't take. But that doesn't make you me." Mirror Maya's expression shifted from satisfaction to confusion. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I choose to be more than the sum of my alternatives." Maya began the most complex transformation she had ever attempted, not changing form, but changing the fundamental nature of her existence. "I choose to be the Maya who makes mistakes and learns from them. The Maya who feels doubt but acts anyway. The Maya who saves her people not because she's perfect, but because someone has to try." The mirror versions began to waver, their hold on reality weakening as Maya embraced the paradox of being both herself and all her possibilities simultaneously. This was what it truly meant to be a Bondkeeper, not to choose between human and dragon nature, but to transcend the need for such choices entirely. Jin, following her example, faced his own reflections with newfound courage. "I choose to be the Jin who honors his father's memory by building something better, not by tearing everything down in revenge." The corridor around them began to shift, mirrors cracking as the reflection matrix struggled to contain beings who refused to be defined by their limitations. In the distance, Maya could feel Vortex's consciousness stirring as the dimensional anchor that held him began to weaken. "Almost there," she said, reaching for Jin's hand as they approached the heart of the mirror realm. "Whatever we find at the center, remember, we're not here to destroy the reflections. We're here to prove that reality is stronger than its inversions." But as they entered the final chamber, Maya realized that the greatest challenge wasn't behind them. It was waiting ahead, wearing the face of a dragon whose chaos magic had been turned so completely inside out that he might no longer remember. Which version of himself was real? The final test of the Bondkeeper's power was about to begin, and failure would mean not just death, but the complete erasure of everything they had fought to save. The heart of the mirror realm was a sphere of crystallized impossibility, where the laws of physics folded in on themselves like origami made from the fabric of reality. At its center, suspended in a web of inverted energy that pulsed with anti-light, hung Vortex, but not as Maya remembered him from her grandmother's stories. The dragon of chaos had been transformed into a creature of absolute order. His scales, once a swirling kaleidoscope of every color that had no name, now gleamed with mathematical precision, each one a perfect geometric shape that reflected the mirror realm's rigid inversions. His eyes, which should have held the wild joy of unbounded possibility, stared with the cold calculation of someone who had forgotten that randomness could be beautiful. "Vortex," Maya whispered, her Bondkeeper consciousness recoiling from the wrongness of what she saw. This wasn't just imprisonment, it was a fundamental violation of everything the Chaos Dragon represented. "That name has no meaning here," Vortex replied, his voice carrying the mechanical precision of a computer processing data. "I am Axiom now, the principle of absolute predictability, the anchor that prevents this realm from dissolving into the disorder it once knew. I have no memory of chaos, no recollection of the random joy you speak of." Maya felt Jin's hand tremble in hers as they approached the crystalline sphere that held the transformed dragon. The energy patterns surrounding Vortex were unlike anything they had encountered, not just inverted, but actively hostile to the concept of change. This was order taken to its logical extreme, where even the possibility of spontaneity had been eliminated. "He's been here too long," Jin said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The mirror realm hasn't just imprisoned him, it's rewritten his fundamental nature." Maya extended her senses, trying to find some trace of the original Vortex beneath the layers of imposed order. What she discovered made her heart sink. The Chaos Dragon's essence had been so thoroughly inverted that freeing him might require destroying everything he had become. He wasn't just trapped in the mirror realm, he was the mirror realm's foundation, the stable point around which all its inversions revolved. "You come seeking to restore chaos?" Axiom Vortex continued, his perfect scales reflecting Maya's image back at her in precise geometric patterns. But chaos is weakness. Randomness is failure. I have seen the truth of absolute order, and it is beautiful in its inevitability. Maya began to circle the crystalline sphere, studying the energy patterns that bound the transformed dragon. Each strand of force was a mathematical equation made manifest, a logical proof that chaos could be contained and controlled. But hidden within the matrix, she began to sense something else. Tiny flaws in the perfect order, minute variations that suggested the original vortex wasn't entirely gone. "Jin," she said softly, "do you remember the stories about chaos magic? How it worked?" Jin nodded, his father's ring pulsing with uncertain light as it tried to process the inverted energies around them. Chaos magic doesn't follow rules. It creates possibilities where none existed before, finds solutions that logic says are impossible. Exactly. And what's the one thing that absolute order cannot account for? Understanding dawned in Jin's eyes. The unpredictable choice. The decision that makes no logical sense but feels right anyway. Maya turned back to Axiom Vortex, her bondkeeper consciousness beginning to formulate a plan that would have seemed insane to anyone who understood the risks involved. "I'm not here to restore your chaos," she told the transformed dragon. "I'm here to prove that even perfect order contains the seeds of its own undoing." She began to sing, not with her voice but with the harmonics of her dual nature, the song that her grandmother had taught her about the first meeting between humans and dragons. It was a melody that contained no mathematical perfection, no predictable progressions, just the raw expression of joy that came from two species discovering they could share the same sky. Axiom Vortex recoiled as if physically struck. "Stop. That sound, it introduces variables into my equations. It makes my calculations uncertain." "Good," Maya replied, stepping closer to the crystalline sphere. "Uncertainty is the beginning of possibility." The song grew stronger, and Maya felt Jin joining his voice to hers, not in harmony, but in the kind of beautiful discord that came from two different perspectives, trying to express the same truth. Around them, the mirror realm began to shudder as the perfect order of its foundation developed hairline cracks. "I can feel him," Maya said, her consciousness touching the buried essence of the true vortex. "He's still there underneath all the imposed structure. The Chaos Dragon is dreaming of order, but dreams can be changed." She reached out and placed her hands on the crystalline surface, feeling the anti-energy burn her flesh, even as her bondkeeper nature began to adapt to its impossible properties. This was going to be the most dangerous thing she had ever attempted, not just sharing her essence with a captive dragon, but fundamentally altering the nature of reality around them. "Maya, no!" Jin protested, recognizing what she was about to do. "If you try to chaos shift the entire mirror realm, it could collapse every dimension connected to it. You could destroy billions of worlds. Or I could save them," Maya replied, her voice carrying the absolute conviction that came from knowing there was no other choice. "Vortex isn't just the anchor of this realm, he's the key to understanding how the Zephyrians control reality itself. If I can restore his chaos nature, we can turn their greatest weapon against them." She began the transformation, not changing her physical form, but altering the fundamental frequency of her existence. The bondkeeper ability to exist as multiple states simultaneously had always been her greatest strength, but now she pushed it to its absolute limit, becoming simultaneously ordered and chaotic, predictable and random, stable and constantly changing. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The crystalline sphere around Vortex began to resonate with impossible harmonics, its perfect mathematical structure developing flaws that spread like fractures in reality itself. Inside the prison, Axiom Vortex screamed as memories of chaos began to bleed through the imposed order. "I remember flying through nebulae that sang with random music, creating art from the collision of asteroids, laughing as I turned enemy missiles into butterflies made of starlight. The mirror realm convulsed around them as its dimensional anchor began to remember what it meant to be unpredictable. Corridors twisted into impossible configurations, mirrors shattered to reveal glimpses of worlds that existed only in potential, and the rigid laws that governed the inverted dimension started to develop exceptions that multiplied exponentially. "It's working," Jin shouted over the chaos of reality restructuring itself. "But Maya, you're pushing too hard. Your consciousness is fragmenting." Maya could feel it. The strain of existing as both order and chaos simultaneously was tearing her mind apart. Each moment she maintained the transformation, she lost a little more of her stable identity. But Vortex was so close to freedom, so close to remembering what he truly was. "Just a little more," she gasped, channeling everything she had into the chaotic resonance that was breaking down his crystalline prison. The sphere shattered with a sound like the birth of galaxies, releasing energies that had been confined for 9 years in a single explosive moment. Vortex, no longer Axiom, but the true Chaos Dragon, erupted from his prison in a whirlwind of impossible colors and mathematical paradoxes. "Maya!" His voice roared with the joy of rediscovered randomness. "You beautiful, illogical, wonderfully unpredictable human, you've given me back my chaos." But Maya was falling, her consciousness scattered across too many states of being to maintain coherence. She had pushed the Bondkeeper transformation beyond its limits, and now she was paying the price. As her vision darkened, she felt Jin catching her, heard Vortex's anguished cry as he realized what her sacrifice had cost. "Stay with me," Jin pleaded. "Maya, you have to stay focused on who you are." Through the growing darkness, Maya smiled. 3 dragons freed, the mirror realm in chaos, and the Zephyrian Empire's greatest weapon turned against itself. Whatever happened to her now, they had won something precious. The return of possibility to a universe that had almost forgotten what it meant to hope. But the war wasn't over yet. In the distance, she could sense something vast and terrible awakening, drawn by the dimensional disturbances they had created. The true master of the Zephyrian Empire was coming, and the final battle was about to begin. The Bondkeeper's greatest test still lay ahead, if she could survive long enough to face it. Maya's consciousness drifted between states of existence like a ship lost in a storm of possibility. She was simultaneously the frightened servant cleaning alien technology, the determined woman who had decoded the dragon's message, and the Bondkeeper who had transcended the boundaries between species. Each identity felt equally real, equally true, and the effort of choosing which one to be was tearing her apart. "Maya, focus on my voice," Jin pleaded, his hands gripping hers as the sanctuary ship carried them away from the collapsing mirror realm. "Remember who you chose to be, not who you could have been." Through the fractured lens of her perception, Maya saw Vortex coiled around the ship's healing chamber, his restored chaos magic creating aurora patterns that danced across the walls. His essence was wild and free again, but she could sense his anguish as he watched her struggle to maintain coherence. "The transformation should not have damaged her this severely," Pyrian said, his ancient voice heavy with concern. "A Bondkeeper's nature is built to withstand paradox, to exist as multiple states simultaneously." "Unless," Celeste added softly, her silver scales dim with worry, "she pushed beyond even those limits." Maya didn't just free Vortex from the mirror realm, she fundamentally altered the nature of an entire dimension. No being should be able to contain that much contradictory reality. Ember raised his great head, golden eyes blazing with protective fury. "Then we heal her the way she healed us, by sharing our essence, by reminding her who she truly is." "Too dangerous," Pyrian warned. "Dragon essence and human consciousness don't merge easily. We could destroy what remains of her identity trying to save it." But before they could debate further, the ship's biosensors erupted in alarms. Through the viewports, a sight appeared that made even the ancient dragons recoil in terror. A vessel the size of a moon, its surface covered in crystalline spires that pulsed with the captured life force of 1,000,000,000,000 enslaved souls. This was the Eternal Throne, personal ship of Emperor Zethka, the being who had forged the Zephyrian Empire from the ashes of 1,000 conquered civilizations. "Bondkeeper," a voice like the grinding of continental plates, spoke directly into their minds, bypassing all physical barriers. "I have come to see this anomaly that dares to challenge the natural order of the universe." Maya felt the Emperor's presence pressing against her fractured consciousness, like a weight that could crush mountains. But in that pressure, she found something unexpected, a focal point that allowed her scattered identities to begin coalescing around a single burning truth. She would not let this monster harm another soul. "I am Maya Chen," she said, her voice growing stronger as she forced her scattered selves to merge around that core conviction. "Bondkeeper of the Ancient Alliance, granddaughter of Elena the Wise, and the one who will end your empire." The Emperor's laughter was the sound of dying stars collapsing into black holes. "You are a mistake, child. A glitch in the programming of reality that I will correct personally." The Eternal Throne's weapon systems activated, but these weren't ordinary energy cannons. Each weapon was powered by the tormented essence of a different conquered species. Beams of crystallized despair, missiles that exploded into clouds of absolute hopelessness, gravity wells that pulled not just matter, but the very concept of resistance into inescapable darkness. "Defensive formation," Zephyrian commanded, and the four dragons responded with the synchronization of beings who had fought together for millennia. Zephyrian's golden flames created shields of pure will, Celeste's silver fire carved paths through the despair clouds, Ember's crimson chaos turned the Emperor's weapons against each other, and Vortex's rainbow discord made the enemy targeting systems forget what they were supposed to shoot at. But Maya could feel the dragons weakening under the assault. Even united, even fighting with the fury of beings who had nothing left to lose, they were facing an enemy who had consumed the life force of countless civilizations. Emperor Zethkur wasn't just a conqueror. He was the embodiment of conquest itself, a being who had transcended individual existence to become a living concept of domination. "You see?" The Emperor's mental voice dripped with satisfaction as his weapons began to overwhelm their defenses. "This is why your alliance was doomed from the beginning. Dragons are creatures of individual power. Humans are weaklings who require others to survive. Together, you are still less than the sum of parts that were never whole to begin with." Maya felt her consciousness stabilizing as anger burned away the last of her fragmentation. This creature had enslaved her people, tortured the dragons she loved, and turned entire civilizations into fuel for his machine of conquest. But more than that, he was wrong about the fundamental nature of the bond between humans and dragons. "You're right about one thing," she said, beginning a transformation unlike any she had attempted before. "Alone, we're not enough to stop you, but we were never meant to fight alone." Maya reached out through her bondkeeper consciousness, not just to the four dragons around her, but to every awakened human across the galaxy. Millions of minds touched hers, servants in Zephyrian palaces, workers in mining colonies, children who had grown up dreaming of dragons despite being told such dreams were forbidden. "Join with us," she called to them all. Not as servants or masters, not as separate species trying to coexist, but as one people with one purpose, to prove that freedom is stronger than tyranny, that hope can burn brighter than despair. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across the galaxy, humans began to sing, not with their voices but with their souls, adding their essence to the growing web of connection that Maya was weaving. They sang of Earth's green skies, of children's laughter, of the dream of a universe where every being could choose their own destiny. The dragons felt it too, their individual powers merging not just with Maya's, but with the collective will of every human who refused to accept defeat. Zephyrian's wisdom became humanity's determination. Celeste's healing became their resilience. Ember's passion became their courage. Vortex's chaos became their creativity. And Maya, the bond keeper who existed at the intersection of all possibilities, became the conduit through which two species transcended their limitations to become something greater than either could achieve alone. The sanctuary ship transformed around them, its biomechanical hull reshaping itself into something that was simultaneously vessel and living being, technology and organism, individual craft and collective consciousness. This was what the ancient prophecies had spoken of, not just the return of the dragons, but the birth of a new form of existence that combined the best aspects of all sentient life. Emperor Zethkur's assault faltered as his targeting systems tried to lock onto an entity that existed as both one and many, individual and collective, possible and impossible. "What are you?" he demanded, his voice carrying the first note of uncertainty he had expressed in millennia. Maya smiled as she felt the combined power of dragons and humans flowing through her, each consciousness distinct yet unified in purpose. "We are what you could never understand," she replied. "We are what happens when beings choose to grow together instead of conquering each other." The Eternal Throne's weapons recharged for a final, devastating assault, an attack powered by the enslaved essence of every civilization the Emperor had conquered. But Maya and her bonded family were ready, their combined will focused on a single unshakable truth: some things are worth more than survival. Some dreams are worth dying for. And sometimes, the greatest victory comes not from destroying your enemy, but from proving that there's a better way to exist. The final battle was about to begin, and its outcome would determine not just the fate of the galaxy, but the future evolution of consciousness itself. The battle that followed transcended anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. It wasn't fought with conventional weapons or even conventional physics. It was a war between two fundamentally different concepts of existence. Emperor Zethkur embodied the philosophy of domination, where power meant the ability to impose one's will on others. Maya and her bonded collective represented something entirely new, the idea that true strength came from voluntary unity, from beings choosing to share their essence freely. The Eternal Throne unleashed weapons that rewrote the laws of reality around them. Gravity became a tool of oppression, pulling hope itself into crushing singularities. Time flowed backwards in targeted areas, trying to undo the bonds that connected dragon and human consciousness. Space folded to bring the Emperor's enslaved armies from across the galaxy, millions of beings whose souls had been crushed into perfect obedience. But Maya's collective responded with something the Empire had never encountered: improvisation on a cosmic scale. When gravity tried to crush them, Vortex's chaos magic transformed it into lifting winds that carried their essence beyond physical limitations. When time flowed backward, Celeste's silver flames preserved their memories, allowing them to experience the regression while maintaining their forward momentum. When space folded to bring reinforcements, Ember's passion ignited rebellion in the hearts of the enslaved soldiers themselves. "Impossible!" Emperor Zethkur snarled as his own troops began turning against him, awakened by the collective song of freedom that Maya's bond carried across dimensions. "I have perfected their conditioning. They cannot resist my commands." "You perfected their fear," Maya replied, her voice carrying the harmonics of 1,000,000 human souls. "But you never understood that fear is just love protecting itself, and love always finds a way." The Emperor's response was to abandon all pretense of strategy, pouring the accumulated life force of 1,000 conquered civilizations into a single reality-sundering attack. The beam that erupted from the Eternal Throne didn't just carry destructive energy, it carried the concept of endings themselves, the fundamental force that brought all stories to their conclusions. Maya felt the attack strike their collective consciousness like the death of hope itself. Around her, she sensed Pyrion's ancient wisdom flickering as the ending force tried to conclude his millennia-long story. Celeste's healing light dimmed as the beam attempted to write the end on every life she had ever saved. Ember's passionate flames guttered as the attack tried to finalize all his unfinished dreams. But Maya was a bondkeeper, and bondkeepers existed at the intersection of all possibilities. She had learned to be both human and dragon, both individual and collective, both possible and impossible. Now she discovered she could be both ending and beginning simultaneously. "Jin," she called to her faithful companion, whose consciousness remained her anchor to humanity, even as their collective grew to encompass millions. "Do you remember the first story your father told you about dragons?" Through their bond, she felt Jin's memory crystallize. A tale of a dragon who chose to give up his immortality to save a human village, and how that sacrifice didn't end his story, but transformed it into something greater. "Stories don't really end," Jin said, understanding flooding through both their minds. "They just change into new stories." Maya smiled and opened herself completely to the Emperor's ending force, not resisting it, but embracing it, showing it that every conclusion was also a commencement. The beam struck her fully, trying to write the end on the bondkeeper's existence, but instead of destroying her, it gave her access to the fundamental narrative structure of reality itself. "Thank you," Maya said to Emperor Zethkur, and the sincerity in her voice made his ancient consciousness recoil in confusion. "You've shown me what I really am, not just a bridge between species, but a bridge between stories, the one who helps old tales become new ones." She began to sing then, not the song of freedom she had used to awaken humanity, but something far older, the first song ever sung by any conscious being, the melody that had called the universe itself into existence. Around her, the four dragons added their voices, each contributing harmonies that spoke of different aspects of creation. Pyrion's notes carried the wisdom of time, Celeste's melody held the compassion of healing, Ember's rhythm pulsed with the passion of growth, and Vortex's chaos created the beautiful discord that prevented the song from becoming static. But the song wasn't complete until millions of human voices joined it, each adding their unique perspective to the cosmic symphony. Former slaves sang of freedom, children sang of wonder, parents sang of protection, and elders sang of hope for generations yet unborn. The Emperor's reality-ending weapon met this song and simply stopped. Not because it was blocked or deflected, but because the song was teaching it a new purpose. Instead of bringing endings, it began to bring transformations. The enslaved armies across the galaxy found their conditioning not destroyed but evolved, transformed from blind obedience into conscious choice. The conquered civilizations didn't have their captivity ended, but saw it become the foundation for a new kind of freedom, one strengthened by having survived oppression. "What have you done?" Emperor Zethkur demanded, his voice carrying millennia of bewilderment. For the first time in his existence, he was witnessing something he couldn't understand or control. "I've offered you the same choice I've offered everyone else," Maya replied, her consciousness now expanded to encompass not just the collective of dragons and humans, but the very fabric of possibility itself. "You can choose to grow beyond what you are, or you can remain trapped in the story you've been telling yourself." The Emperor's response was to attempt something that had never been done before. He began to devour his own empire, consuming the life force of every Zephyrian in existence to fuel one final, absolute attack. His physical form expanded beyond the boundaries of his ship, becoming a living void that sought to swallow not just Maya's collective, but the very concept of alternatives to his rule. "If I cannot rule, then nothing will exist," he declared, his voice now the sound of entropy itself. "I will become the ending of all stories, the silence that follows the last word." Maya felt the collective consciousness wavering as the Emperor's nihilistic assault struck them. This wasn't just an attack on their bodies or minds. It was an assault on the very idea that existence was preferable to void. Around her she sensed doubt creeping into the unified song, as beings across the galaxy began to wonder if perhaps the Emperor was right, if perhaps it would be easier to simply stop trying, stop hoping, stop being. But in that moment of ultimate despair, Maya remembered something her grandmother had taught her about the ancient bond between dragons and humans. It wasn't just about sharing power or consciousness. It was about the fundamental truth that no story, no matter how dark, could continue without someone willing to turn the page. "You're wrong," Maya said, her voice carrying not just her own conviction, but the accumulated determination of every being who had ever chosen to keep trying, despite impossible odds. "Stories don't end because someone decides they should. They continue because someone decides they must." She reached out, not with her bondkeeper abilities, but with simple human compassion, and did something that shocked even herself. She offered Emperor Zethkur the same bond she had shared with dragons and humans. "Join us," she said, "not as ruler or subject, but as another voice in the song. Help us write a story where everyone gets to choose their part." The Emperor's assault faltered as he encountered something he had never experienced in eons of existence: unconditional acceptance. For the first time, someone was offering him connection without conquest, unity without domination. And in that moment of hesitation, the future balanced on the edge of possibility, waiting to see which story would ultimately be told. For a moment that stretched across eternity, the galaxy held its breath. Emperor Zethkur, the being who had conquered 1,000 civilizations and reduced entire species to fuel for his ambitions, stared at Maya's outstretched hand with an expression that no one had ever seen on his ancient features: uncertainty. "You would bond with me?" he asked, his voice no longer carrying the grinding authority of absolute power, but something far more fragile, the hesitation of a being who had forgotten what it meant to be offered a choice rather than demanded obedience. "After everything I have done, after all the suffering I have caused," Maya felt the collective consciousness around her wavering with conflicting emotions. Through the bond, she sensed Pyrion's ancient anger at the creature who had orchestrated their capture and torture. She felt Celeste's silver flames flickering, with memories of decades spent powering alien machines. Ember's rage burned at the thought of offering mercy to the being who had perverted his chaos magic into weapons of oppression. Even Vortex's chaotic nature recoiled at the idea of including such a force of rigid domination in their beautiful discord. Most powerfully, she felt the pain of millions of humans across the galaxy, beings who had lost families to Zephyrian conquest, children who had grown up in slavery, entire cultures that had been erased to feed the Emperor's hunger for control. But she also felt something else through the bond, the deep, abiding truth that her grandmother had taught her about the nature of dragons and humans working together. The alliance had never been about perfection. It had been about the possibility of growth, the belief that any being could become more than they were if offered the chance to choose a better path. "Yes," Maya said simply, her hand still extended toward the Emperor. Because that's what the bond means. Not that we're perfect, but that we're willing to help each other become something better. Emperor Zethka stared at her for another eternal moment, and Maya could feel the weight of his consciousness, eons of accumulated power, millennia of viewing other beings as resources to be consumed, the crushing loneliness of a creature who had never known connection without domination. He began, and for the first time in his existence, the Emperor of the Zephyrians found himself at a loss for words. I do not know how to be anything other than what I am. None of us did, Jin said, stepping forward to stand beside Maya. His father's ring blazed with golden light as he addressed the being who had enslaved his world. I didn't know how to be anything other than angry. Maya didn't know how to be anything other than afraid. The dragons didn't know how to be anything other than proud and isolated, but the bond taught us. Pyrion's massive golden form moved closer, his ancient eyes fixed on the Emperor with an expression that balanced justice and mercy in perfect equilibrium. The bond does not erase what you have been, he said, his mental voice carrying the weight of eternal wisdom, but it offers the possibility of becoming something new. Celeste added her silver voice to the growing harmony. We have all been imprisoned by what we thought we were. The bond sets us free to discover what we might become. Ember's crimson flames danced with newfound purpose as he spoke. Join us and help us build something better than conquest. Help us create instead of consume. Even Vortex, his chaotic nature usually opposed to any form of order, offered his own perspective. Chaos isn't the absence of pattern, it's the freedom to create new patterns. Let us help you discover what patterns you might make if you chose cooperation over control. Emperor Zethka's form began to shift, the void-like darkness of his nihilistic assault gradually condensing back into something resembling his original shape. But Maya could see the difference. Where once there had been absolute certainty, now there was the first tentative spark of curiosity. The choice is yours, Maya said gently. Join us willingly, or remain as you are. But know that either way, your empire of fear is ending. Your people are awakening to the possibility of choice, and no amount of power can force them back into unconsciousness once they've tasted freedom. The Emperor looked out at the galaxy around them, seeing with new eyes the rebellions erupting across his empire as former slaves discovered their capacity for self-determination. He saw Zephyrian nobles laying down their weapons as they encountered the infectious joy of beings who chose cooperation over conquest. He saw entire worlds transforming as the song of the bond reached every corner of his former domain. My empire, he whispered, is becoming something greater than it ever was, Maya completed. Not because we destroyed it, but because we're helping it grow beyond the need for empires at all. Emperor Zethka closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, Maya saw something there that she had never expected to find. Tears, not of sorrow for what was lost, but of wonder at what might be possible. Slowly, carefully, as if he were learning to use his hands for the first time, the Emperor reached out and grasped Maya's offered palm. The moment their consciousness touched, the galaxy exploded with new possibility. Emperor Zethka, no, not Emperor anymore, but simply Zethka, a being learning to exist without titles or dominion, added his voice to the growing song. His contribution wasn't the grinding command of absolute authority, but something far more beautiful, the deep bass note of genuine humility, the harmony of a consciousness that had discovered it didn't need to consume others to have meaning. Across the galaxy, the transformation accelerated. Former slaves and former masters found themselves working together to build something unprecedented, a civilization based not on hierarchy, but on voluntary cooperation. Dragons emerged from hiding to share their ancient wisdom with young beings who had only known oppression. Humans brought their adaptability and compassion to species that had forgotten what it meant to dream of better tomorrows. The Zephyrian Empire didn't fall. It evolved, becoming the foundation for a new kind of society where every being had the right to choose their own path while remaining connected to the greater whole. Is this what you saw? Jin asked Maya as they stood together watching the galaxy transform around them. When you first decoded that message from Parian, did you know it would lead to this? Maya smiled, her bondkeeper consciousness touching every awakened mind in the galaxy while remaining grounded in her own human identity. I knew it would lead to something better, she said. I just didn't know how much better could be. Vortex's chaotic laughter rippled through dimensions as he created aurora displays that painted impossible colors across the void. And this is just the beginning. Think of all the new stories we can tell now, all the new songs we can sing. Pirian nodded sagely, his ancient wisdom finally at peace. The bond has evolved beyond anything we original dragons imagined. It is no longer just between humans and dragons, but between all conscious beings who choose growth over stagnation, connection over isolation. Celeste's silver flames danced with pure joy as she felt the healing energy of the bond reaching every wounded soul in the galaxy. "We are all bond keepers now," she said, "each of us a bridge between what was and what could be." As Maya looked out at the galaxy, their galaxy now, all of theirs, she felt her grandmother's spirit smiling somewhere in the space between stars. Elena the Wise had been right. Hope did endure, carried forward by ordinary beings who made extraordinary choices when the moment demanded it. The 4 dragons who had vanished in 3004 were free. The message sent from an alien ID in 3018 had been answered, and the galaxy would never be the same. But then again, growth was never about staying the same. It was about becoming something wonderful and new together. The song of the bond played on, and it would continue playing as long as there were beings willing to choose connection over conquest, love over fear, and hope over despair. In a galaxy full of infinite possibility, that song would never end. It would only grow more beautiful with each voice that chose to join the eternal, ever-expanding harmony of free beings learning to exist in conscious unity. Maya Chen, the humble janitor who had become the first bondkeeper of a new age, smiled and added her own voice to the song. After all, someone had to help turn the page to the next chapter of the story. And what a beautiful story it was going to be.